on a different ride. What he's done is he's been able to take our Republican candidates and in the media's mind push them so far to one area that he picks up some of our Republicans, our independents, and our female voters. We are not going to let that happen because I am taking all of these issues and putting them under one umbrella. And I'm going to say these are the issues that the 4th District in Utah cares more about. This message resonates from Tea Party to wherever, which definitely should, right? So that's what I'm here to do. Remember, the left will tell you, by the way, the left has convinced us that someone like me is not supposed to exist. I'm not supposed to exist. What, a daughter of parents that immigrated to this country, that worked hard for everything that they have, a conservative, a proud Republican, someone who's actually taken principles and put them into practice. You realize for some of these entrenched politicians, I can't exist because it ruins their plans. But I can tell you, I exist. And when I say I exist, we exist because we are a party that does not. We're not exclusive. We are inclusive. We're not about economic equality for all. We're about opportunity for all. That's what we stand for. And I need you to stand up with me. I don't need a job. My life is very happy. My husband makes a great living for myself and my children. The only thing that would pull me away from that household and what I'm doing in my city would be to try and save this country for my children, for your children. That's the main motivator for me. And it should be the motivator for everyone else. I have one more story I wanted to tell you because it's important. I used to tell my dad to tell me stories about Haiti all the time. I'm going to share one with you because I think it's really important. One day, I was sitting down in the living room and I said, Dad, tell me a story. And he just jumps right into it. He said, great. I was 14 years old. I was in Haiti. Went into a movie theater, walked out with my friends, and I saw a bunch of people rushing in one direction. And he said, in Haiti, when you saw people rushing and screaming in one direction, you ran. You did not look back, you just ran. And so he said he was going, and then he happened to take a glance back, and he saw a man, blue uniform, blue hat, and black boots. And he said his stomach just dropped, because that person was a military group the president called a Tonton Macoute. Now it's kind of interesting, I hope you remember what that, Tonton Macoute is what they were called. And they were supposed to be a military group that helps the president out, but they kind of wreaked havoc everywhere. They just instilled fear in the people and just did whatever they wanted to. They used to play this game where they would line young men up and they would shoot them in the knees. And if they fell, then they would kill them off. But if they stayed there, stayed strong, then they would let them go. They'd be maimed, but they'd let them go. Just to tell you what type of group he was dealing with. So he said he crawled into a drainage pipe and he stayed there. And when he didn't realize how long he was there. When he opened his eyes, he crawled back out and ran home. And I said, oh my gosh, Dad, that must have been so scary for you. And he's like, you think it was scary for me? My mother was a mess. He said, if you did not come home as a child in the evening during that time, you weren't coming home. He said, I never want to know the fears that my mother had. And I certainly didn't want my children to have the same fears. Why is this important to us? There's a young girl in Saratoga Shores Elementary that drew this picture for me. She had a substitute teacher that came over and drew a picture for me. And the substitute teacher brought it over to me. And I saw this picture that had bright colors and this heart, and all of these fun little things. And I looked at this picture and I was like, wow, here's a girl with all the hopes and dreams in the world. She would never suspect any adult to do her harm. Yet she has no idea that she has her own Tonton Macoute chasing her. That is $16 trillion of debt. Now you understand the fears I have for my children. And you should have the same fears. Question?
So I think everybody thinks we need to do something about the economy, but there's as many ideas of what to do as there are people. So can you be specific on what you think is within the right role of the federal government to do with respect to the economy?
Yes. Well, let's talk about, first of all, it doesn't matter what we talk about. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We've got Cup, Cap, and Balance that was sponsored in the House with Jason Chaffetz, passed the House but to fail in the Senate. You've got the Balanced Budget Amendment that was sponsored by Hatch and Lee in the Senate and failed in the Senate. Balanced Budget Amendment does nothing unless you actually cut the spending. So in my head, when you think about priorities, you have to think about cutting spending. When it comes to taxes, when it comes to anything, everybody goes, they start talking about flat tax, fair tax. I don't even think that that should be the subject right now. Even if you go to flat tax right now, the tax burden will be so heavy that we've got to do a couple of things first. So, cutting spending. What's on that item? We've got to be able to repeal Obamacare. That's $1.8 trillion over the next 10 years. 2, there's Medicaid block grants. 3, you've got Department of Energy. Tell me what they're really doing and how that helps out, except stifles the economy. You've got several things. You've got the Department of Education. We can do a better job on a state level. There's nowhere in the Constitution that states that we need to do that. And I'd love to get some ideas on that, but again, remember, I am a mayor and I believe that the best solutions are found at the most local level. I'd like to take that and at least move it to the state level, because I think that we could do a better job there. There's items that we can go in and we can cut and look at that would make a big difference. And entitlement reform. It's got to be on the table. Now, we cannot pull out the rug from under those who are on entitlements. I mean, who are on Social Security. We can't do that. Those people, they really don't even have, our seniors don't have the option of going back to work. So what do? There are things that we can do right now. We can adjust the bend points. We can do what people have talked about. There's some solutions out there that we need to get past. Increase the age of retirement. We can decrease the COLA. There's several things that we can do. We can also, the Democrats right now want to talk about eliminating the cap. In other words, you make $106,000, you don't get taxed on Social Security. But if you eliminate the cap, then you get taxed on everything that you make. I think that a better solution would be if you make over, say, $200,000, you may not collect 100% of your Social Security. Right now, it's $6.5 trillion in the hole. So entitlements have to be on the table.
There's 2 issues on this. One you briefly touched on. What do you think about the payroll tax reduction that they made, the 2% reduction? And number 2, what do you think about the charitable contribution deduction that they're saying, that Obama is saying he's against?
Okay.
I mean, that's just 2 small issues.
We incentivize. Let's talk about the
affect
charitable donation. We incentivize and reward bad behavior and punish good behavior. That's what we do with a lot of our policies. The payroll tax deduction, okay, so you're going to extend it for 2 months. What does that do for our businesses except make things completely unpredictable? It's baloney. 2, if you extend it for a year, what are you going to do within that year to make it so that it's sustainable, to make it so that it actually works? Simplify the tax code so that it actually works. I am tired, and I'm sure you are also, of politicians kicking the can down the road and having somebody else solve them so that in 2 years we're back in the same position we were with a lot more problems because the issues have compounded over and over again. So what we have to do with payroll tax deduction, yes, extend it in a year, but we also have to give Congress the caveat of simplifying the tax code during that time to actually get something done. You realize that when we're working in our cities, it's one thing to do something that will help your city out in the first year or 2 to get yourself reelected. It's a completely different thing to make sure that your city is sustainable for the next 40, 50, 60 years, which is what my job is. My job is to put policies in place that sustain our city.
But
that's what it should be.
That payroll tax has nothing to do with income tax. That's a whole separate thing. And Obama said that by passing that, there will be 169 million people take home an additional $1,000.
It was
or I don't know, it was 169 or 161, something like that.
Mhm.
If you take 100, let's say it's 161 million people take home an additional $1,000, that's $161 billion
Mhm.
that's not going into Social Security.
Well, and
And
here's,
Social Security's been robbed blind for the last, since 1966.
here's the other thing. This is how Americans get deceived. We're talking about this, and the president says, we're going to save X amount to every American. In the meantime, while he's doing this, Lisa Jackson, the administrator for the EPA, issued a utility MAC rule that is going to cost our coal companies an additional $10 billion. The cost of that compliance, who pays for it? We do. So he's sitting there saying, oh, we're going to save every American X amount of money here, but we're going to cost them so much more on this angle.
Well, but what my point is, it reduces what goes into Social Security.
Mhm.
Now, that's not going to affect me, but it's going to affect these people that are under 60 years old, under 50 years old, because Social Security's not going to get that money. And that's gone on,
Social
that's gone on for a
Security
long time.
is a big, big, big issue. $6.5 trillion. And again, they don't want to touch it, yet they're doing everything they can. They've taken this money, it's almost like taking the money and putting it in a general fund and saying, we've got a trust here, but we're funneling it through everything else. There's no trust. It's gone. It's 6.5 trillion in the hole. So, yes, I understand what you're saying, but I can't even have that conversation because we've got a president that's doing exactly the opposite of what he's saying he wants to accomplish. So we've got to get in front of these people. How can I even, the subject right now in Washington, well, the last time I was there during CPAC, was the contraceptive issue. Do you see why I'm saying I can't even have a normal conversation because we've gone so far away from what we're supposed to be doing that now government can mandate what a private sector puts in their insurance policy? I can't even have these conversations. We need to get from one place to another.
But you're going to have to get into it deep enough to have those conversations.
Yes, we are, and I'm ready. We're going to get into it. But I'm not having a conversation about contraceptives because we can't even start there. I cannot have a conversation about it. Government should not mandate to a private sector or a private company what they should add to their insurance policies or not. Insurance used to be there for the private sector to entice people to come in. It was a benefit to entice people to come in. The conversation is way off base. You had a question?
I did. It's
You forgot?
Kind of two comments about
Okay.
payroll tax and
Uh-huh.
other things. First of all, I think the two most important things in our country right now are the debt and the economy. They go hand in hand.
Mhm.
Nothing else can happen in our country without eliminating the horrendous debt that we have and having a good economy. Speaking of the economy, we're self-employed. The payroll tax means nothing to creating jobs. It has nothing to do with it creating a job. The economy has to do with creating jobs. And if we have more people that are committed to changing things in Congress instead of committed to being elected, I think that this country will change. But that's the biggest problem, and it has been for decades, is that well-intentioned people run for